Welcome to Mr. Chalk's Revision Tips. In this video, we will look at
resting potentials, action potentials, and the refractory period. So an action potential is part of a process that occurs during the firing of a neuron. So during an action potential, part of the neuron membrane opens to allow positively charged ions into the cell and negatively charged ions out. So this process causes a rapid increase in the positive charge of the nerve fiber. So the action potential is very rapid. So in order for a neuron to move from a resting potential to an action potential, a short-term electrical charge that allows an electrical signal to be passed from one neuron to another is fired through. And the level of stimulation in that neuron must receive or must reach the action threshold in order to generate an action potential and depolarization. So if we look at how this process works, so the first thing is that at resting potential, the concentration of sodium ions outside of the axon membrane is high relative to inside of it. So the potassium ions inside the axon membrane is high relative to the outside of it. So the overall concentration of positive ions is greater on the outside of the axon, making the outside positive in comparison to the inside. So therefore, the axon is therefore relatively negative. So stimulus causes sodium channels to open, and therefore sodium ions to influx into the axon by diffusion. This causes a reversal of the charge, hence the inside of the axon now becomes positive in comparison to the outside. So this is the action potential and the membrane becomes depolarized. So the localized electrical circuits established by the influx of sodium ions cause the opening of sodium volta-gated ion channels a little further along the axon. So the resulting influx of sodium ions in this region causes it to become depolarized. So behind this new region of depolarization, the sodium channels close and the potassium channels open. So the potassium ions start to diffuse out of the axon. So the action potential is propagated along the axon. So the outward movement of potassium ions continues along the extent of the axon membrane. Behind the action potential, the membrane returns back to its original charged state and becomes repolarized. So following repolarization, the axon membrane returns to its resting potential in readiness for a new stimulus. So just to finish off, propagation. So an action potential generated at the axon hillock propagates as a wave along the axon. So the currents following inwards at this point on the axon during an action potential spread out along the axon and depolarize the adjacent sections of its membrane.
Thanks for watching.